Vanessa Cole walked into a luxury dealership looking like she had nothing, and within seconds, the room decided she didn't belong. No welcome, no respect, just quiet judgment and a few careless laughs. But she didn't react. She just watched. Because sometimes, the way people treat a stranger reveals everything about who they really are. Have you ever been judged like this? Comment below, and if this hits you, like, share, and subscribe for more stories. A thin veil of rain draped over Atlanta, soft as a secret the city wasn't ready to confess. Vanessa Cole, 53, founder of Cole Luxury Motors, stood by the glass wall of her penthouse office, watching the city blur beneath rain. Once underestimated in her youth, she had built an empire through discipline and relentless resolve. Success had refined her but never softened her. Behind her, silence filled the room, interrupted only by the low hum of machines and distant movement outside the door. On her desk lay flawless reports, strong revenue, rising growth, satisfied clients. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Vanessa had learned long ago that perfection often hid the most dangerous cracks. Her fingers moved to a second stack, plain envelopes, unmarked, anonymous. The first had arrived weeks ago, then more followed. She opened one slowly. They don't see people anymore, only wallets. The words were simple, but they lingered like a quiet echo. Vanessa didn't react outwardly, but inside, something tightened. She remembered the early days being dismissed, ignored, judged before speaking. Those memories had shaped her rules. Respect first, always. And now, those rules felt distant. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts as Lydia Grant, 38, her composed and efficient assistant, stepped in. Once a lawyer who left her career after burnout, Lydia valued order and control above all. "The board is ready," Lydia said. Vanessa didn't turn. "Delay it." The answer was calm, final. Lydia paused, surprised, but nodded and left without question. Vanessa returned to the letters. Another described a customer ignored because of simple clothing. Another spoke of managers prioritizing appearances over people. None of it matched the official reports, and that was what unsettled her most. Numbers could be adjusted, behavior could be hidden, but patterns told the truth. She walked slowly across the room, heels echoing against marble, each step steady, deliberate. Her reflection caught her eye. Perfect suit, perfect posture, perfect control. This was the version the world respected. But it was not the version that built everything. She stopped, staring at herself longer than usual. Beneath the polished surface, she saw the younger woman who had once been invisible. That memory didn't hurt anymore, but it hadn't disappeared either. It had simply waited. And now, it was speaking again. Vanessa exhaled quietly, then picked up her phone. "Marcus," she said when the line connected. Marcus Hale, 45, regional director, known for his integrity after exposing internal corruption years ago, listened without interruption. "I need full access to internal monitoring systems." Quietly. There was no hesitation in his voice. "Understood." Vanessa ended the call and looked back at the city. The rain had grown heavier now, tracing faster lines across the glass, as if time itself was urging her forward. The next morning, Atlanta moved as it always did, busy, bright, indifferent. But Vanessa Cole did not return to her office. In a small apartment far from the towers she owned, she stood before a mirror. The transformation was simple. No designer suit. No perfect hair. Just worn clothes, quiet presence, nothing that demanded attention. She adjusted her appearance carefully, not to hide, but to disappear. For the first time in years, she looked like someone the world would overlook. And that was exactly what she needed. She stepped outside alone. No driver. No assistant, no recognition. People passed by without a glance. Conversations flowed around her, untouched. The city continued, unaware that the woman who had built part of it now walked among them unseen. A taxi pulled up beside her. The driver, a tired but kind-faced man in his 50s, glanced at her through the mirror. "Where to?" he asked simply. Vanessa paused. Just a second. Then she opened the door and got in. "Airport," she said. The car pulled away, merging into traffic as the city slowly faded behind her. Vanessa looked out the window, watching Atlanta shrink into distance, not as a queen leaving her kingdom, but as a woman stepping away from something she was no longer sure she understood. Her reflection in the glass was faint now, almost unrecognizable, and in the quiet space between raindrops and movement, a question lingered soft, unresolved, impossible to ignore. Had she built something extraordinary, or something that no longer belonged to her? The Miami sun spilled across glass and chrome, turning the dealership into something that looked less like a workplace and more like a stage designed for admiration. Vanessa stepped out of the airport into a heat that clung gently to the skin, different from Atlanta's quiet rain, more revealing somehow, as if nothing here could truly hide for long. She moved through the city without urgency, blending into the steady rhythm of tourists, workers, and dreamers, until the sleek facade of Cole Prestige Miami rose before her, polished, perfect, and familiar in a way that made her chest tighten just slightly. This was her creation, or at least, it used to feel that way. Now, standing outside in worn clothes and softened edges, she wondered if she was looking at something she no longer fully understood. Inside, the air shifted instantly, cool, controlled, curated. The showroom gleamed with immaculate precision, every vehicle positioned like a sculpture waiting to be admired. Reflections danced across metallic surfaces, but none of them seemed to settle on her. Vanessa walked in quietly, her presence barely acknowledged, her footsteps absorbed by the polished floor. A young sales associate, Ethan Ruiz, mid-20s, sharp haircut, eager but visibly conditioned by performance metrics rather than empathy, glanced at her for less than a second before redirecting his attention to a man in a tailored suit. That glance told Vanessa everything. It wasn't personal, it was practiced. She moved deeper into the showroom, pausing near a luxury sedan, her fingers lightly brushing the surface as if reacquainting herself with something distant. No one approached. No one greeted her. The silence wasn't empty, it was selective. Across the room, laughter rose easily between staff and well-dressed clients, conversations flowing like a rehearsed symphony. Vanessa stood outside of it, invisible but aware. "Can I help you?" The voice came eventually, but without warmth. Clara Benson, early 30s, impeccably dressed, posture perfect, had built her reputation on high-value sales and efficiency, shaped by years of working in competitive luxury retail environments where speed and appearance dictated success. Her smile was polite but incomplete. "We don't really carry entry-level options here," she added, her eyes briefly scanning Vanessa's clothes before returning to neutral. Vanessa met her gaze calmly. "I'm just looking," she replied softly. Clara nodded, already disengaging, already moving on. Nearby, the glass doors opened again. A couple entered, Harold and Denise Carter, both in their late 50s, dressed simply, their posture carrying the quiet dignity of people who had worked hard their entire lives. Harold walked with a slight stiffness, the result of years in construction, while Denise held her purse carefully, her eyes scanning the room with cautious curiosity. They paused, waiting just for a moment for acknowledgement. None came. Vanessa watched closely now, her focus sharpening. This wasn't about her anymore. Harold approached a display, his hand hovering near the polished surface before pulling back, unsure. Denise whispered something to him too soft to hear, but enough to see the hesitation behind her smile. Across the showroom, Ethan laughed again with another client, his energy bright, attentive, just not here. Time stretched in small, uncomfortable increments. Vanessa felt something stir beneath her calm exterior, not anger, not yet, but recognition. This was how it began, not with insults or confrontation, but with absence, with silence, with the quiet decision that some people were not worth the effort. She turned slightly, observing the entire room as one would observe a pattern forming in real time. The staff weren't cruel, they weren't aggressive, they were simply selective, conditioned to prioritize what looked profitable, to invest attention where it seemed most likely to return something measurable. And that was the problem, because respect had become a calculation. Vanessa walked slowly toward the exit, her presence still unnoticed by most. As she passed Harold and Denise, she gave them a small nod, subtle, almost invisible, but real. Denise returned it, surprised, as if that small gesture carried more weight than anything else in the room. Outside, the sunlight felt different now, brighter, but harsher. Vanessa paused just beyond the glass doors, looking back one last time. Inside, everything continued as before. Smooth, polished, efficient, unchanged. But she was no longer uncertain. This wasn't a single failure. It was a system learning the wrong lesson. And systems, once shaped, did not correct themselves. They had to be confronted. Vanessa adjusted the strap of her worn bag and stepped away, her pace steady, her thoughts sharper than before. Miami had not given her answers, it had given her confirmation. And somewhere ahead she knew the truth would not be this quiet. The Texas heat pressed against the glass like a hand that refused to be ignored, heavy, unapologetic, and impossible to soften. Dallas did not whisper like Miami, it declared. Vanessa felt it the moment she stepped out of the taxi, the air sharper, the pace faster, the energy less concerned with subtlety. By the time she reached Cole Prestige Dallas, she already sensed this place would not hide behind polite indifference. It didn't need to. The building stood taller, bolder, its presence almost confrontational, as if success here was something to be displayed, not quietly earned. Vanessa adjusted the strap of her worn bag and stepped inside, her movements steady, her expression neutral, though her mind had already begun its careful observation. The showroom was louder not in sound, but in attitude. Conversations carried more edge, laughter more confidence, footsteps more purpose. And at the center of it all stood Bradley Knox, early 40s, tall, sharply dressed, with a controlled smile that suggested authority rather than warmth. Years earlier, Bradley had risen quickly after outperforming competitors, but that rise had shaped him into someone who equated success with superiority. To him, efficiency meant filtering people, not understanding them. The moment his eyes landed on Vanessa, something immediate and irreversible happened. A judgment formed, sealed, and delivered without hesitation. "We're not a shelter," he said, his tone smooth but cutting, as if the insult had been rehearsed enough to feel natural. A few employees nearby chuckled, not loudly, but enough. Enough to confirm that this was not unusual, enough to reveal that this was culture. Vanessa didn't flinch. She had heard worse in her life, much worse. But what struck her was not the words, it was the ease with which they were spoken. Nearby, a younger employee, Tyler Dean, 26, new to the team, watched the exchange. His posture was uncertain, his expression conflicted. Tyler had grown up in a modest household where respect was taught before ambition, but here, under Bradley's leadership, he was learning a different language, the language of performance over principle. He didn't laugh, but he didn't intervene either, and that silence was its own kind of participation. Vanessa took a slow step forward, her voice calm, almost curious. "If I had money, would that change anything?" Bradley smiled, not kindly, but confidently. "If you had money," he said, "you wouldn't look like that." The sentence landed with the weight of certainty. And in that moment, something inside Vanessa settled. Not anger, not hurt, clarity. Across the showroom, another figure lingered, Luis Ortega, late 50s, a mechanic turned small business owner, dressed simply in a faded button-up shirt, hands rough from years of labor. He stood near a display vehicle, hesitant, waiting for acknowledgement that never came. Vanessa noticed the way he shifted his weight, the way his eyes moved not with curiosity, but with quiet calculation, as if deciding whether he belonged here or not. That decision should never have been his to make. And yet, it was. Vanessa turned slightly, observing the room as a whole now. No one questioned Bradley. No one corrected him. The laughter, the silence, the indifference, they all aligned too perfectly to be accidental. This wasn't behavior. This was structure. She let a few seconds pass, long enough for the moment to fully exist, to settle into memory not just hers, but theirs, even if they didn't realize it yet. Then she gave a small nod, almost imperceptible, as if acknowledging something only she could see. "Thank you," she said softly. Bradley frowned slightly, confused by the response, but the moment passed quickly for him. For Vanessa, it did not. She turned and walked toward the exit, her pace unchanged, her posture steady. Behind her, the showroom resumed its rhythm almost instantly, as if nothing had happened. Conversations continued. Deals progressed. Laughter returned. Uninterrupted. Outside, the sunlight hit harder, reflecting off the glass behind her like a mirror she no longer needed. Vanessa paused for just a second. not to look back, but to think. Miami had shown her the whisper. Dallas had shown her the truth, and the truth was no longer subtle. As she stepped forward into the heat, one realization became undeniable. This was not a flaw hidden in corners. This was a system that believed it was right. And systems like that did not change quietly. 3 days later, Dallas stood beneath a sky so clear it felt like the world had chosen not to blink as truth prepared to arrive unannounced. The morning began like any other. At Cole Prestige, Dallas polished floors, confident voices, deals already in motion before noon. But beneath that routine, something invisible had shifted. Vanessa had not returned yet, at least not in the way anyone expected, and yet her absence had already begun to echo. Inside the showroom, Bradley Knox adjusted his cufflinks with practiced precision, his reflection sharp and controlled in the glass. He believed in control the way others believed in luck completely. Success had always reinforced his methods, never questioned them. To him, people were variables, and variables needed sorting. That belief had never failed him. Not until now. At exactly 10:12 a.m., the first sign appeared, not loud, not dramatic, just the quiet arrival of a black vehicle outside the glass doors. Then another, then a third. Conversations inside slowed, not because anyone understood what was happening, but because something in the air changed. Like the moment before thunder when even confident voices hesitate. The door opened. Vanessa Cole stepped in. No disguise, no worn shoes, no invisibility. She wore a tailored black suit that carried authority without effort, her posture unchanged, her gaze steady and unreadable. The room did not fall silent because she demanded it. It fell silent because something deeper recognized her. Recognition moved through the showroom like a ripple. Subtle at first, then undeniable. Bradley's smile appeared instantly, refined, controlled. "Miss Cole," he said, stepping forward, voice smooth. But his eyes betrayed him. For the first time, they searched for something they could not immediately define. Context, explanation, perhaps even permission to recover. Vanessa looked at him, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with a stillness that felt heavier than both. "Good morning," she replied. That was all. No accusation, no reference to what had happened. And somehow, that made everything worse. Behind Bradley, Tyler Dean stood frozen, recognition hitting him harder than anyone else. He replayed the moment from days ago in his mind, the silence, the laughter, his own inaction. It settled in his chest now, not as fear, but as understanding. The kind that comes too late to prevent, but just in time to matter. Near the far end of the showroom, another presence lingered. Angela Morris, early 40s, regional compliance officer, recently assigned after minor discrepancies had appeared in internal audits. Angela had built her career on attention to detail, shaped by a past where her own family business collapsed due to unchecked mismanagement. She didn't trust appearances, she trusted patterns, and today she was here not to observe sales but behavior. Vanessa moved through the showroom slowly, her steps measured, deliberate. She stopped briefly beside a vehicle, her fingers brushing its surface just as they had days before. The difference now was not the action, it was the awareness surrounding it. Every employee watched. Every movement felt amplified. "Please," Vanessa said calmly without raising her voice. "Continue as you normally would." It was a simple instruction, but no one knew how to obey it. Because normal had suddenly become visible. Ethan approached a client, but his tone shifted, more careful now. Clara smiled, but it lingered longer than necessary, less natural. Conversations resumed, but they felt staged, like actors unsure if the audience could see through them. Vanessa said nothing. She didn't need to. Angela stood quietly at a distance, taking notes not on paper, but in memory. Tyler hesitated, then finally approached Luis Ortega, the man still lingering from earlier visits, and offered assistance. It was awkward, imperfect, but real. Luis looked surprised, cautious, as if unsure whether this attention would last. Vanessa noticed. She noticed everything. Hours passed this way, not with confrontation, but with exposure. Every glance, every delay, every forced smile revealed more than any accusation could. And slowly, the room began to change not because of orders, but because of awareness. By late afternoon, the weight in the air had settled into something undeniable. Bradley approached again, his confidence thinner now. "If there's anything you'd like to address," Vanessa turned to him. "There is," she said quietly, "but not today." The words were calm, final, because today was not for judgment. Today was for truth, and truth, once seen, could not be unseen. As Vanessa walked toward the exit, Angela followed at a distance, already understanding what would come next. Tyler stood still, his silence no longer neutral. Bradley remained where he was, for once without a script. The showroom continued behind them, but it was no longer the same. And somewhere within that quiet transformation, a decision had already been made, one that would not be spoken here but would be impossible to escape. A cold wind moved through Chicago like a quiet witness, brushing past glass towers and carrying with it the kind of clarity that leaves no room for denial. The conference hall stood vast and immaculate, rows of seats filled with executives, managers, and employees from across the Cole Luxury Motors network. No music played, no casual conversation lingered. The air held a weight that everyone felt but no one named. At the center of it all stood Vanessa Cole, not hidden, not observing, but present in full authority. She wore no expression of anger, only a calm that felt far more decisive. Behind her, a large screen remained dark, waiting. Among the audience sat Bradley Knox, posture stiff, eyes forward but unfocused. For a man who had always relied on certainty, this uncertainty unsettled him more than any accusation could. Nearby, Tyler Dean sat with his hands clasped tightly, his thoughts circling back to every moment he had chosen silence. Growth, he realized, did not always begin with confidence. Sometimes it began with discomfort. At the edge of the stage stood Daniel Brooks, mid-50s, Chief Operations Officer, a man known for restoring failing divisions with strict discipline after once losing an entire regional branch due to misplaced trust. That failure had shaped him into someone who valued accountability above reputation. He didn't speak now. He simply watched, understanding that this moment belonged to Vanessa. Vanessa stepped forward. No introduction. No build-up. She pressed a button. The screen came alive. Dallas. The footage was clear, unedited, unprotected. Bradley's voice. The laughter. The hesitation. The silence. Every detail unfolded exactly as it had happened. No distortion, no narrative to soften it. The room did not react loudly. There were no gasps, no interruptions, just stillness. The kind that forces reflection whether one is ready or not. Bradley lowered his gaze slowly, not because he had been exposed, but because, for the first time, he understood what he had become within the system he believed he controlled. Around him, others shifted in their seats, not all guilty, but all implicated in some way through action, through silence, through acceptance. Vanessa let the footage end naturally. She did not rush to speak. She allowed the silence to settle, to deepen, to do what words often could not. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, unforced. "We sell vehicles," she said, "but we serve people. Nothing more, nothing less." The sentence moved through the room, simple enough to understand, powerful enough to remain. She turned her gaze toward Bradley, not harsh, not forgiving, simply direct. "This is not about one person," she continued. "It is about what we allowed to become normal." Bradley stood slowly. There was no defense in him now, no argument, just acceptance. "I understand," he said quietly. Vanessa nodded once. "You're dismissed." No raised voice, no humiliation, just finality. The words carried more weight than anger ever could. Across the hall, Tyler exhaled slowly, as if something inside him had shifted into place. He didn't feel relief. He felt responsibility, and for the first time, he welcomed it. Daniel Brooks stepped forward slightly, ready to continue operational adjustments, but Vanessa raised a hand gently, stopping him. "There will be changes," she said, addressing the room. "Not in policy alone, but in expectation." The screen behind her shifted to a single line. "Respect is not optional. This is not a slogan," Vanessa continued. "It is a condition. If you cannot see people, you cannot represent this company." No applause followed. Only understanding. Because this was not a moment to celebrate. It was a moment to redefine. The meeting ended without ceremony. People rose slowly, conversations quieter than before, each person carrying something different, some regret, some clarity, some determination. Bradley walked out without looking back. Tyler remained seated for a moment longer, then stood. His posture changed in a way that no training could teach. Vanessa stepped away from the stage, the weight of leadership not heavier but clearer. Outside, Chicago moved as it always did, unaware of what had shifted inside that room. But within the system she had built, something fundamental had changed, not perfectly, not instantly, but undeniably. And in showrooms across the country, something subtle began to appear. A pause before judgment. A longer look. A different choice. Because now, the light had done what it was meant to do. It had named everything. At the end of it all, when the lights dimmed and the voices faded, what remained was not the fall of a man, but the awakening of many hearts. Because sometimes, the greatest miracles are not loud. They do not come with thunder or signs in the sky. They come quietly. In the moment someone chooses kindness, when they could have chosen pride. Vanessa did not change the world that day, but she reminded it of something sacred. That every person who walks through a door carries a story, and only God knows its full weight. And perhaps that is where the miracle lives. Not in power, not in wealth, but in the simple choice to see one another the way God sees us. With dignity, with patience, with love. So the next time someone stands before you, tired, quiet, or unseen, remember, you might be standing in front of a blessing in disguise, and how you treat them might be the answer to a prayer you never heard. If this story touched your heart, take a moment. Share it with someone who might need a reminder of kindness today. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been judged too quickly or surprised by someone's true worth? And if you believe, even just a little, that kindness still matters. Subscribe, stay with us, and be part of a place where every story reminds us to see deeper. May God bless you, protect your path, and fill your life with quiet miracles, the kind that change everything, one heart at a time.
If you enjoyed this story, don't go away. Drop a comment, tell us where you watching from, and subscribe to Hidden Black Tale for more.